Setting the scene today is really crucial because we are looking at a moment of profound and unfortunately entirely mandated transformation for Jamaica.
Absolutely.
The island was recently battered by a Category 5 hurricane, a storm named Melissa, and it was one of the most severe weather events in its recorded history.
It really was.
And this event isn't just a weather story, is it? It's a high-stakes narrative. We're talking about economic foundations being tested to their absolute limit. Physical structures being challenged by a new climate reality, and this aggressive global race to capture market share in the aftermath.
That's it exactly.
So our mission for this deep dive is explicit. We're going into the specific economic damage, but also looking at this surprisingly strong financial bedrock that was sort of secretly laid before the storm.
Which is a fascinating piece of this puzzle.
It is. And then we'll get into the long-term shifts predicted for the housing market
Right.
and the intense competition now facing Jamaica's absolutely vital tourism sector.
That's absolutely the right way to frame it. I mean, when you synthesize all the sources, what you see is a nation at a definitive crossroads.
Right.
This is so much more complex than just a cleanup effort. Hurricane Melissa has essentially forced a comprehensive and, I would argue, an unavoidable reexamination of everything.
Everything.
How the nation is designed, where it builds, how it sustains itself economically in a world where these events are just getting more and more frequent.
And the information we have lets us see this from, what, both the ground level and the 30,000-foot view?
Exactly. We can zoom in and zoom out. We've got detailed analysis from real estate experts like Jamaica Homes offering these immediate ground-level forecasts.
Okay.
And right alongside that, we have the high-level economic context from financial analysts. So you can connect these big bureaucratic dots, like a policy win in Brussels, with the very real decision a family is making on the ground.
Whether to build with wood or switch to reinforced concrete?
Precisely. It connects the macro to the micro in a really powerful way.
Okay, let's unpack this right away. Before we can even talk about the rebuild, we have to grasp the sheer, terrifying magnitude of the hit. What are the immediate economic realities facing Jamaica?
The impact is staggering. The numbers are profoundly sobering for anyone tracking development in the Caribbean.
A severe event, without question.
Right. And the significant economic gains Jamaica had made in the last few years have been completely shaken to their core. We're not talking about a slight dip here.
Right.
Early assessments are projecting a sharp economic contraction, a full-blown recessionary environment that analysts believe will last well into the coming year, if not longer.
And we have to put a number on this damage because it's almost unimaginable. The source material points to an estimated 40% hit to the nation's GDP.
40%.
40%. I mean, that is an immense figure. It's the erasure of years of economic output in a single event.
It is. And just to give you a sense of the physical disruption, we're told roughly half the island is still, as of November 2025, just trying to get back to normal.
Half the island?
That 40% figure, you have to pause on it because the cascade effects go far beyond the macro number.
What do you mean?
It translates directly into mass labor displacement, severe government budget cuts, a massive spike in urgent international borrowing needs.
And a halt to new projects, I assume?
A complete halt to all non-critical development for the foreseeable future. This kind of contraction, it sets a dangerous precedent for the social and political stability of the nation.
And if you look at where the damage landed, it just hammered the twin pillars of the Jamaican economy, didn't it? At the same time, let's start with the biggest one. Tourism.
Tourism is the engine, you know. It's the foreign exchange, the most visible sign of economic health. And now it faces this double whammy.
Okay, break that down.
First, you have significantly reduced room capacity. We're talking major structural damage to hotels, resorts, all the services around them.
Because people literally can't stay there.
They physically can't, especially in those popular high-density areas along the coast that were flattened. And second, you have the huge drag of an international travel advisory.
Which means insurance companies won't cover trips.
Exactly. And major travel companies just reroute their customers. So visitors aren't just wary, they're actively being sent elsewhere.
And the other pillar, agriculture, suffered just as tremendously. This one hits domestic life immediately, right?
Immediately and directly, we're seeing immense, widespread damage to farmland, particularly in the western parishes.
And those are crucial for domestic food production.
Crucial, not just for export, but for food security at home. This is the part that translates directly into hardship for the average Jamaican family.
How so?
This massive damage to domestic crops means you're going to see severe supply shortages almost instantly.
Which means prices go up?
Sharply. You get sharp food inflation hitting the poorest families the hardest, destabilizing household budgets that are already strained by the immediate need for repairs. It's a humanitarian crisis wrapped inside an economic one.
And beyond those two huge sectors, what about the actual backbone of the economy, the infrastructure?
The infrastructure collapse is a massive, multifaceted problem that basically dictates the entire recovery timeline.
We're talking about the power grid.
We're talking electricity networks being severely compromised, major roads and bridges just washed out, critical ports and airports facing logistical nightmares from damage.
Communication systems, too, I'd imagine.
Heavily impaired. And these are not minor repairs. Analysts are estimating that the damage to these core assets, roads, power, communication, it will take years, not months, to fully repair and modernize.
Years.
And that interconnected damage creates immense bottlenecks in all the other recovery efforts. You can't get construction materials in, you can't move skilled labor around, everything slows down.
So we have a clear multi-year crisis defined by this 40% contraction. The analysts are warning the country has to brace for a protracted, painful recession.
They absolutely must. And the long view here is maybe the hardest part to face. The rebuilding timeline stretches explicitly into 3 to 5 years.
And the sources note that's longer than the recovery from the pandemic.
It is. It's potentially more complicated. When you look at the sheer scale of lost productive assets, from thousands of hotel rooms to farm fields to a functional power grid, the path back isn't just long, it's incredibly capital intensive.
3 to 5 years. That's a long time. It means a whole generation of students and young professionals will start their careers in a severe recession. That has profound ripple effects.
It does, socially, politically.
But this is where the story gets really interesting, because despite this profound crisis, the sources show us that Jamaica had actually been sort of secretly laying a much stronger foundation for growth before the storm.
This is the critical piece of context. It's what transforms the outlook from merely tragic to one of, well, mandated opportunity. Before the storm, Jamaica successfully negotiated its way off major international financial monitoring regimes.
And that pre-storm regulatory strength is its biggest financial anchor right now.
It is.
Which specific regimes are we talking about here? And why are these, bureaucratic achievements so essential now?
There were 3 key victories. On paper, they sound dry, but they hold immense power in global finance. First, the country was removed from the Financial Action Task Force, or FATF, which monitors anti-money laundering compliance. Second, they were delisted from the European Union's high-risk AML list. And third, from the EU's tax cooperation list.
That sounds incredibly bureaucratic. So tell me why that subtle shift is so profoundly important for stability, especially when you need international funding immediately.
Because it's the unseen fundamental component of resilience. When a country is on those lists, it flags them as a risk.
And that risk scares away investors.
It introduces massive doubt. It slows down every single cross-border transaction and increases the compliance burden exponentially. When you're removed, it's a global signal that your financial frameworks are strong, trustworthy, and aligned with modern standards.
So practically speaking.
Practically speaking, it means a major bank in Frankfurt, which previously had to do extensive, time-consuming reporting just to wire money to Kingston, now treats Jamaica like any other compliant market.
So it speeds everything up.
It radically speeds up everything, from major infrastructure loans to simple trade agreements.
So how does that translate to real-world impact, especially now in the recovery phase when billions are needed?
It creates a smoother, faster, and more trusted path for global finance. International banks just breathe easier dealing with Jamaican institutions.
Which means less red tape.
Less red tape, smoother transactions, and crucially greater trust and more predictable relationships with what are called correspondent banks.
And those are?
They're the big global institutions that actually process those critical cross-border transactions and make sure money moves efficiently between countries.
That is so relevant now, given the immediate need for capital. We know remittances money sent home by Jamaicans abroad are an absolute lifeline.
Precisely. Remittances are the lifeblood for everyday Jamaicans. And now, those funds move with fewer obstacles, less financial suspicion. The whole system feels less rigid, more open. At the exact moment, thousands of people need money wired home for basic repairs and food.
It's like a decentralized resilience component.
That's a great way to put it. It enables this grassroots, immediate recovery without having to wait for government aid or international agencies to disperse funds.
Wait, doesn't the immediate crisis, the disaster zone aspect, risk depressing the market, even with the diaspora wanting to invest?
That's a sharp question, and it's complex, but that regulatory strength provides the confidence to overcome the initial fear. The architecture of opportunity here suggests that the long-term investment mindset, especially from the diaspora, overshadows the immediate disaster.
A nation seen as lower risk gets better lending conditions, even after a disaster.
Exactly. And for real estate, that has practical results. Mortgage approvals become less fraught, interest rates stabilize, or at least don't spike catastrophically, and construction loans, which are suddenly needed at a massive scale, are easier to get.
You mentioned overseas buyers, and the source material is very clear about the key role of the Jamaican diaspora. Their investment is influential, both financially and emotionally. How does this new financial stability specifically help them?
The diaspora is perhaps the single most influential, reliable driver in Jamaican real estate. They provide crucial foreign exchange. When the country is financially compliant, their investments become less of a bureaucratic odyssey. They face fewer hurdles, due diligence is faster, wiring large sums for construction is less complicated.
It just makes it easier to help.
It makes the post-storm rebuild much easier to fund, often bypassing domestic lending pressures. When the diaspora sends money and invests, they are signaling this profound, deep-seated belief in the island's long-term trajectory, despite the immediate damage.
And that convergence of regulatory strength and committed investment acts as a stabilizing force against the recession.
An immense stabilizing counterforce.
It sets up this incredibly complex dynamic. On one hand, a sharp recession, 40% GDP hit. On the other, the financial rails are actually stronger than before. So let's jump into how the real estate market is going to absorb these opposing forces.
The prevailing analysis from property experts like Jamaica Homes is that the market will see a significant slowdown in sales volume, but, and this is crucial, it will not experience a crash in prices.
Why not?
It's based on a key historical behavior in the Jamaican context. Property owners fundamentally prefer to hold on to their property rather than sell at a loss, especially in a crisis.
So that creates an inherent price stability.
It does. It prevents the sort of fire sale collapse you might see in other markets after a major disaster.
So what really stands out to you here? The property market is being redesigned by the storm, not destroyed by it. It sounds like recovery is fundamentally about adaptation.
That is the core idea. Recovery is adaptation. We're seeing 6 clear, interlinked outcomes predicted by the analysts, and they all focus on forward-looking resilience and climate proofing.
These aren't just minor trends.
No, they represent a fundamental, permanent shift in what defines a desirable property in Jamaica.
Okay, let's start with outcome 1, which is the immediate driver of activity, the rebuild surge.
That's right. There is going to be massive, strong demand for construction professionals across the board. Contractors, architects, structural engineers, quantity surveyors, the entire focus shifts immediately to restoration.
But it's not just about replacing what was lost.
No, not at all. The sources anticipate a mandatory government-led shift toward entirely new construction standards.
So building back stronger is now policy.
It has to be. We're talking mandatory requirements for specific hurricane-resistant building materials, more reinforced concrete frames, high-tensile steel roofing tie-downs to stop roofs from separating in Category 5 winds, improved drainage systems. Reconstruction is now synonymous with climate adaptation.
Building back stronger is key, but the next question is, where are we rebuilding? Because Hurricane Melissa has fundamentally remapped the risk profile of the entire island. Which brings us to outcomes 2 and 5, right? Location and geography.
Absolutely. Outcome 2 focuses on this seismic shift in what's desirable. Buyers, especially long-term investors and the diaspora, are going to prioritize geography with ruthless intensity.
They'll be looking at what? Elevation, wind exposure.
Elevation, wind exposure profiles, and detailed, newly updated flood risk maps from the government. These things are no longer negotiable.
So areas that were maybe considered quiet or less popular might see a jump in value.
A sudden, aggressive rise in desirability, simply because they demonstrated better resilience during the storm. The old rule of closeness to the beach equals highest value is being rewritten.
The new rule is resilience equals highest value.
Exactly.
And outcome 5, the reevaluation of coastal living, is the inevitable flip side of that. Coastal communities are iconic, but the true cost of seaside living is now an unavoidable question.
The storm has forced and accelerated these crucial, uncomfortable conversations
About what specifically?
about mandatory setback distances, how far you have to build from the shoreline, about the need for enhanced coastal defenses like seawalls, and critically, about significantly increased insurance requirements for shoreline properties.
So new coastal developments are going to be a lot more expensive to build and insure.
Dramatically more expensive. And that will dictate development patterns for decades, likely pushing high-density residential building further inland.
Okay, let's talk about market stability and the immediate pressure on living situations. That covers outcomes 3 and 4, the human logistics of recovery.
Outcome 3 addresses market stability. And despite the recession, it's anchored by specific buyer groups who view this disaster with a long-term lens.
The diaspora buyers, returning residents.
Right. And long-term investors who see these post-disaster moments as opportunities. That non-speculative mindset helps stabilize prices and prevent a free fall.
Okay, but outcome 4 is the immediate and socially critical concern, the rental demand surge.
It's a huge issue. Tens of thousands of homes were damaged or destroyed, so there's an immediate, immense push for viable rental units.
And that pressure is concentrated in the urban centers, Kingston, Montego Bay.
Exactly, the areas that retained more infrastructure integrity.
So we have a contracting economy, but rental demand is spiking, creating a housing squeeze.
Precisely. This surge is expected to push rents sharply upward, potentially creating a temporary housing crisis even while unemployment is high.
That's a very difficult feedback loop.
It creates severe cost of living pressure on the labor force, right in the urban areas where you need people to coordinate the rebuild.
And finally, outcome 6 addresses the elephant in the room after any disaster: insurance and preparedness.
Yes, the mechanism for future resilience.
The sources mention that underinsurance has been a widespread issue in Jamaica for a long time.
It has. Homeowners often carry only partial coverage, or none at all, because of the cost.
But a storm like Melissa changes that calculation.
It has to. The sheer catastrophic nature of it is expected to finally drive homeowners and investors to prioritize full coverage. It's no longer an optional expense. It's a necessary part of due diligence.
So insurance costs will probably rise.
They will, significantly. But the nation's total financial resilience against future storms will dramatically improve. If homes are being rebuilt to certified hurricane-resistant standards and homeowners are properly insured, the financial burden on the state decreases exponentially over time.
It forces property owners to internalize the true cost of risk now.
Instead of socializing that cost through national debt and disaster relief funds later, it's an investment in future sovereignty and stability.
This is a profound internal shift. But as Jamaica grapples with this, we have to shift gears to the global race for tourism dollars. The competitive landscape does not pause for a natural disaster.
Absolutely not. The Caribbean tourism landscape is intensely competitive, dynamic, and frankly, ruthless. The moment one major island stumbles, its rivals move in aggressively.
And in this case, that rival is the Dominican Republic.
The DR has moved with remarkable speed and decisiveness to capture travelers who were redirected from Jamaica and other impacted islands. They saw a window and they pounced.
And we have specific data on this. DR tourism officials immediately authorized 800 additional flights.
800. A mix of scheduled and charter services, specifically to absorb that surge of travelers. That's an enormous mobilization and a clear statement of competitive intent.
It shows just how organized their market is.
It is. They recognize the capacity gap created by the damage to Jamaica's north and west coasts, and they filled it immediately. The DR is now confidently projecting hotel occupancy above 95% through the critical holiday season.
They're capturing the revenue that Jamaica desperately needs.
And their Civil Aviation Board president, Hector Porcella, was remarkably blunt about it. He said, and I'm quoting, "All that tourism that was going to Jamaica, the Dominican Republic will benefit."
Wow, not hiding their intentions at all.
No. This presents a massive immediate financial challenge to Jamaica's recovery. The very funding mechanism for the national rebuild is being diverted.
So let's look at Jamaica's damage again in this context. The storm hit the main tourism belt hard.
Right across the highest demand corridors. The north and west coasts, where the densest clusters of resorts are.
And what are the timelines looking like for reopening?
The early industry chatter suggests that a full reopening for many of the major hotels won't happen until early 2026.
Which means the country is facing a multi-month deficit in its primary foreign exchange earner.
Precisely when it needs that hard currency the most to pay for imported construction materials.
So this defines a very specific make-or-break strategic window for Jamaica. They have roughly 4 to 6 months until the start of the 2026 winter season to stabilize, rebuild, and get their tourism product ready.
It's a critical window.
So what's the rebound strategy? They have to accelerate their recovery messaging, right? Clarity is everything for nervous travelers.
Transparency is paramount, and the messaging must be sophisticated. Visitors and tour operators need clear, constantly updated information on exactly which resorts are open now, which are reopening soon, and what activities are still available.
The message can't be Jamaica's closed.
It has to be Jamaica is rebuilding, but these specific areas are ready for you now. The longer the uncertainty persists, the more loyalty is lost permanently to competitors like the DR.
So early 2026 is the make or break period.
It absolutely is. Failure to re-enter the market aggressively in that window risks losing visitors long term. Travelers who switch to the DR might find a new favorite, and winning them back is incredibly expensive.
Can Jamaica realistically compete on price with the DR during this rebuild?
That's the strategic dilemma. Competing on price is likely impossible and probably unwise, given the need to rebuild with more expensive, climate-resilient materials.
So they have to lean on their cultural narrative.
It's their core strength. Jamaica's advantage has always been its differentiation. Its unique culture, its music, its food, its authentic, experience-driven atmosphere.
And that remains intact.
That core identity remains intact. It's not just a sun and sand destination. That magnetic appeal will drive demand back quickly, but only once the physical infrastructure is demonstrably restored and the messaging is clear.
Which sets up our final section, the future. This isn't just about economic recovery. It's about the very architecture of future resilience.
The storm has forced Jamaica into this direct, unavoidable confrontation with new building questions. Architects, engineers, they all have to deal with a new baseline defined by stronger winds, higher sea levels, and rising floodwaters.
The old way of building just isn't sufficient.
It's not. Climate-resilient building is no longer an option. The source material calls it the country's new architectural language.
An architectural language, what does that mean in practice?
It's an institutional shift. It means new approaches are required, mandatory elevated foundations. We're hearing maybe a minimum of 3 feet above the prior floodplain in vulnerable areas.
A move away from traditional materials.
A big move away from wood construction to reinforced concrete with specific structural ratings, and completely reimagining roof systems to withstand, say, 180-mile-per-hour winds.
Give us a tangible image of what this new Jamaican architecture looks like on the ground.
Imagine neighborhoods where every new foundation is visibly elevated. Imagine cisterns and decentralized water systems becoming standard to ensure water security when the grid fails. We'll see more integrated, engineering-grade hurricane shutters on all new buildings.
So the look of a standard home will change.
It will become lower, stronger, more intrinsically anchored to the ground to resist uplift. It's an expensive shift, but it's a permanent one, ensuring the next storm doesn't cause a 40% GDP contraction.
So as these construction patterns change, the physical housing map of Jamaica is going to shift significantly.
It has to.
New hubs will emerge, shaped not just by nice views, but now heavily dictated by resilient access.
Access to what? Reliable utilities that are buried underground, stable, flood-resistant transport networks, localized security.
It's a convergence of forces then.
Climate-resilient construction, a strategic shift to safer locations, a deeper partnership with the diaspora, and a stronger domestic financial ecosystem. That is the future.
And ultimately, as we review all this, the sources highlight that Jamaica's greatest strength isn't physical, but human.
That is the core takeaway. Even with a 40% GDP hit and half the island struggling, the country continues to function, powered by the sheer determination of everyday Jamaicans.
That resilience is fueled by a deep-rooted work ethic.
It is, and by the communal willingness of neighbors to immediately pool resources and start rebuilding, and the consistent, reliable generosity of the diaspora sending crucial funds home.
That concept of human infrastructure is vital, but so often overlooked. Can you elaborate on that?
It's a real economic force. The sources note how community associations, local co-ops, churches, informal networks, they become these critical, unofficial supply chains for materials, labor, and food when the formal state infrastructure fails.
So people don't wait for the government.
They activate their own networks immediately. That localized, rapid, collective response is the true definition of their human infrastructure. It's the most robust infrastructure the nation has, and it's the engine that ensures the long-term vision remains viable.
And that long-term vision isn't just about returning to what was. It's an act of national imagination. building a stronger, more resilient Jamaica.
One that blends tradition with innovation, beauty with practicality, and anchors its future on resilience and ambition.
That brings us to our synthesis. This deep dive has shown us a nation facing immense immediate difficulty. The economic shock is real, projecting a 3 to 5 year recovery.
A long timeline.
But we found that powerful counter-anchor, the strong financial regulatory foundation built before the storm, providing a crucial anchor of trust for funding. We've seen the housing market is not expected to crash, but is adapting, dramatically moving inland, prioritizing resilience in every new piece of construction.
A new architectural language.
Exactly. And finally, the race is on to win back tourism market share by early 2026. We're watching a nation forced to build back a modern, financially compliant structure in the middle of a crippling recession. The future of Jamaica's real estate isn't just about selling property, it's a declaration of national intent.
And while that 3 to 5 year economic recovery timeline is sobering, it's a long, hard road. The mandated shift toward client-resilient architecture creates a profound, long-term economic dividend.
How so?
Every reinforced home, every elevated foundation, every fully insured property built today represents reduced vulnerability and reduced national expense during the next inevitable storm.
It's a down payment on future stability.
A stronger, more sustainable economic and social foundation for the next generation. The true measure of this recovery won't be just getting back to the pre-Melissa status quo. It will be whether the nation succeeds in building the future it needs. A future where determination and innovation permanently outlast the destructive force of any storm.